Well, as Israel stands on the brink of launching another major offensive in famine-stricken Gaza City, UN Chief Antonio Guterres is again calling for accountability and condemning an endless catalogue of horrors. Local medics say another 71 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli bombs and gunfire over the past 24 hours. Nearly 24 of them had been waiting for desperately needed aid. This despite international demands for Israel to reconsider its plans to take over Gaza City over fears that the offensive will cause significant casualties and displace the roughly 1 million people who are sheltering there. Well, in southern Gaza, medics say dozens more Palestinians have been admitted to Nasser Hospital in Khan Younis with gunshot wounds after being transferred from an aid distribution site. This, as staff there are still coming to terms with the deadly strike on the hospital earlier this week. For more, we are joined now by Dr Travis Melin, an ICU doctor who had been working at Nasser Hospital, but he's now safely back in the US. Travis, thanks so much for speaking with us again. We had been talking with you earlier this week. Technical difficulties, though, disturbed the interview a little bit, so it's great to have you back on the programme again. Since leaving Gaza, have you been able to get in touch at all with your colleagues at the hospital, and how have they been doing after that attack earlier this week?
Yeah, they were very interested to hear when I got home, safe and sound, of course. Yeah, we've communicated quite a bit since then. And for them, this is not well, this is horrible and awful. They have been experiencing this for 2 years. So 2 days later, they're back to business as usual, seeing the usual mass casualties, working in the operating rooms. In some ways it's as if nothing has happened, but in other ways they all carry the mental scars, and they have friends that have been killed now, and friends that have been injured. So it's just one more insult on top of 2 years of ongoing insults.
Yeah, and the Palestinian ambassador to the UN accusing Israel of carrying out a premeditated strike on medics and journalists. Would your former colleagues there agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think everyone there and the vast majority of the international community would all agree with that. Right? There were two initial strikes, it appears, one on the stairwell that you can see pictured there, and there's another one on the east stairwell that's just around the corner, where I had a couple of friends hanging out at the moment who were injured. And then, shortly thereafter, I guess we're now finding out that there were kind of two simultaneous strikes that hit, this stairwell that killed the majority of those journalists. So, four strikes within a 15-minute period. Obviously no mistake there.
Yeah, and while that is exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu has called this a tragic mistake, Israel hasn't provided an explanation at all for that more deadly strike that we saw that hit as medics were rushing to the scene, medics and journalists. What do you make of claims from the IDF, regular claims from them, that Hamas militants are operating in and around hospitals in Gaza? You, of course, have been working at Nasser Hospital.
Yeah, I mean, they make that claim continuously, and they use that as an excuse to do kind of whatever they want to do, right? They're using that as an excuse to starve a civilian population, which is, a war crime. So they're kind of routinely using that to justify their war crimes. What I can tell you from having worked and lived in the hospitals there for 4 total months is I and all of the rest of the doctors who have ever worked there have not seen any evidence of Hamas or anyone operating out of hospitals. So of 100% of people who have been on the ground living in those hospitals for the last 2 years, no one has seen that. So it's pure propaganda from, I think, every doctor and nurse who has operated there.
And Travis, given the fact that hospitals are protected from attack under international law, why do you think the world is tolerating these kind of assaults?
It's a great question. I mean, I think there's been like a slow creep, perhaps, in what is okay. And now we've gotten to a spot where, Israel can, live stream a very clear war crime. And, the international community is, not as outraged as we should be, right? So I think it's just been this like slow creep of war crime after war crime, like last year, the ICC issued arrest warrants for starvation as a weapon, right? And then since then they've started a complete embargo and complete blockade of food for months. So like they were accused of a war crime, and then nothing happened, and then they intensified their war crime that they are committing. And that's kind of what we've been seeing, I think, over the last 2 years, is just you get away with a little bit, and they push a little bit further each time. So it's really time for the international community to step up and actually do something about this. Impose some sanctions, arms embargoes. Like this really has to end. This is so brazen, and it's just a slap in all of our faces that we're allowing this to happen.
And Travis, you're obviously just back in the US, having left Gaza this week, but have you seen any change in rhetoric at all when it comes to the discussions that are taking place about what has been happening in Gaza?
Personally, no, I haven't really seen a lot. I've heard people say things, but I've never seen any actions, change. I've never seen anything different on the ground. In the time that I was there, last year people were starving, and then came back this year and people were, like acutely starving, and then they started letting a little bit of food in, and the international community kind of just started ignoring the starvation crisis because people are getting 10% of the calories they need. So no, I think I haven't really seen anything change appreciably in the last 2 years.
And you spoke to us earlier in the week about the kind of injuries that you were treating when you were over in Gaza. Some doctors are reporting seeing the same kind of injuries occurring essentially in clusters to people who've been admitted with gunshot wounds from aid sites. Is that something that you can attest to?
Yeah, it's atrocious. It really felt as if the Israelis had picked a target for the day and said, let's shoot everyone in the genitals. And so we'd have a wave of people come in that had all been shot, in and around their scrotum, because a lot of the people going to get the food at these aid sites are men. And another day we might see every single person with a gunshot wound to the head, as another example. Even down to 10-year-old boys, that are trying to go there and get food for their families. So it very much felt as if they were just choosing a target for the day and having fun, with target practice. The other things that I saw was gunshots to the tops of heads, tops of shoulders. So very clearly that people are ducking for cover while they're being shot at, and they're being targeted in the tops of their heads while they're hiding from being killed.
And Travis, given that it is such a difficult place to work, it's even upsetting, watching the images that we have been seeing coming out of Gaza. Why do you go there, and are you planning to return?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to return. I can only spend so much time there a year, but I mean, this is a place in the world that has the greatest need right now. This is where doctors aren't allowed to go. This is where food is not allowed to go. So the need is intense there, and I think on a I know it's the U.S. that is funding this, and it's my tax dollars that are going into this also. So I think for a variety of reasons, I feel like it's kind of our duty as a medical community to stand up and do something about a very clear genocide that our country is complicit in.
Okay, Travis. Well, it's highly commended, the work that you've been doing over there, you and your colleagues. Thanks so much for joining us again on the programme. We do really appreciate your analysis and your testimony. That is Dr. Travis Melin, an ICU doctor who had been working at Nasser Hospital in Gaza, is now safely back in the US.